Hi everyone, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Well, today is a momentous day because I'm finally planting the gutter peas. But before I do, I know you're looking around me saying, hey, there's more things that are going on in the garden than last week. So let me show you what's changed. And you know, this is the time of year where things really start to happen fast. So I'll give you a quick update on that and then we'll get those gutter peas planted. This middle row is where I'm growing the majority of my warm season crops this season. Things like tomatoes, eggplants, melons, cucumbers, and winter squash. Now, because I live in Spokane, Washington, which is USDA Hardiness Zone 5B, we have a short growing season. And so I have to do a few extra things that maybe many of you don't need to do. And that is to make sure I can get the crops to mature by the end of our season. These first three beds are where I'm growing tomatoes. And so I have placed a red plastic tomato mulch on top of the beds. And what that does is it increases the soil temperature and it also reflects more light up into the tomato plants. And they really like that and it makes them more productive. I've also put upright supports for the tomatoes, and when I plant them next week, I'll show you how that works. Now let me take you back a little farther and I'll show you a couple more changes. You'll notice that there's a green mulch that is on top of the next four beds. That is called solar mulch, and that color works really well for other types of warm season crops such as squash, melons, pumpkins, and so on. So that's why there's a green mulch on those beds. The last big change is that last week my husband Bill and I put up this arch that goes over the pathway between these last two raised beds. And I'm going to grow small winter squash and cucumbers up onto it. I'm hoping that they grow really well, go up and over the pathway, and of course I'm hoping to have to watch my head and not get bonked by the various things growing here. But I'm very excited about this. I tried this last year in a different area, but we were having a problem with tree roots up into the beds. And so it was really impacting how well the plants grew. So fingers crossed on that for this year. Now let's go plant those peas. Now if this is the first video you've joined me for, welcome. And if you're thinking, did she really say gutter peas? Yes, that is what I said. This is my third year of using this method. It's widely used in the UK. And basically the concept is that you plant a bunch of pea seeds very thickly into gutters. And then when the time comes, you just shake them out into some furrows to grow. I've done this before, but I've never had good luck just sort of shaking them out really easily. And after watching a couple of videos on YouTube, I realized that what they tend to do is they water these heavily right before they're going to plant them. And also they let the seedlings really grow and form a little bit of a mat of roots on the bottom. And so they all hold together for planting. Well, I really don't want to wait any longer to plant these peas, so I'm going to give it a go today and hope that they do have a thick mat of roots, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, here goes. It's going. That's more like it. Hooray! What a difference. Easy peasy. No pun intended. Now I just need to fill in the soil along the edges of these peas and press out any air pockets. Well, that went way better than the last 2 years. So I don't know how many seeds were planted, maybe like 150. So that is 150 seedlings planted in the garden in maybe 2 minutes flat. So that's pretty impressive. Now the next step is to give them support. And I have to tell you, I don't care what the seed packet says, peas need support no matter what height they are. I have grown in the past some bush peas, and the packet said, oh, they don't need any support at all. And so the plants grew up to about this tall, and then they all fell over in a heap. And you can imagine what a pain in the neck it was to harvest the pea pods. So I always give them support. And actually the funny thing is, these are green arrow peas. They're supposed to grow 28 inches tall, which is what, maybe about here. Well, if you remember photos from last year, they were over 6 feet tall. So I definitely want to give them support. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is it is so great to use natural materials from your garden to support things like peas and beans. Now, in England, and actually throughout the UK and in Europe, they do what is called coppicing, and that's where they are growing different types of fast-growing trees, and they harvest them for what is called coppice wood that they use to create some types of natural plant supports, such as bean sticks or supports for peas. And so I've always kept that in mind, and what I like to do is use excess wood from pruning. And so I have a whole bunch of hawthorn sticks, ones that do not have thorns, thankfully, and that's what I'm going to use to create the support for these peas. Well, this probably looks like a bit of a jungle, but let me explain what we've done so far. We've been pushing each branch in about 6 inches apart, running down the length of the bed. We have a couple of really long branches that we're going to use, and we'll thread it in between when we tie these branches together into the V. So that's where we're at so far. Well, what do you think? Does it look rustic enough? I am so tickled that those peas shook out of the gutter with an audience, so I finally got it right. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Happy gardening!